I think it's important that you know my story, you understand where I am coming from, and you can see that I'm not very different from anybody else that's been in that space as well. When I was pregnant with my first son, I had this idea in my head of what kind of mother I was going to be. Also, this was at the start of Instagram, at like the height of when it was getting really, really popular. And there weren't that term influencer wasn't out there just yet. And I remember seeing all of these moms that were just killing it as a mom. And they're brand new moms. They got their bodies back. They all look so happy. They're all hitting up Starbucks, having their frappuccinos. And it was almost as if their life was just the same or it was even better. And I was looking and scrolling and I'm like, yes, this is the type of mom I'm going to be. Then fast forward, here I am getting my epidural, hunched over, having, all the pain that you have with your contractions. My husband is in front of me and he's holding on to my hands. And when the anesthesiologist poked me in the spine, I remember my whole body just jumped. And she said pretty much what you don't want to hear anybody who has a needle in your spine. Oops, let me do that again. And I remember thinking, okay, all right, let her do it again. And she did it a couple more times. And there were another, jump that I had. And eventually she finished. And I was like, okay, thank God that's over. Let's keep it moving. And I remember I looked up and my husband's eyes were bloodshot red. And I thought to myself, something terrible just happened, but I have to have a child now. I don't have time to ask questions. And so I go into the other room. I have my baby. And a few hours later, I get up to go to the restroom. Now the drugs have started to wear down a little bit. And I noticed this extreme headache. It felt like a fire. My brain was literally on fire. And that fire went all the way down my spine. It was debilitating. And it was like the entire room was spinning around me. And I didn't know what was going on. But what's interesting is that as soon as I laid down, all of the pain went away, 100%. And I asked the doctor, I said, when I sit up, this is what happens. When I lay back down, the pain goes away. And he looks at me. He knows exactly what it is. He goes, oh, you have a leak in your spine. Never heard of that in my life. And he said, oh, it's because the anesthesiologist poked you in the wrong place. So I'm thinking, okay, what do we need to do? What's the remedy? I got to get home, take care of this baby. And they said, well, we can do a blood patch. And I was like, cool. She's like, it might not work, but we can try it. I was like, whatever it is. So they go in, they take this huge needle, blood out of my forearm, put it into my spine to try to patch it up. And it worked for about an hour or two. And then that pain was completely back. And so my mom and my husband and I decided, well, my mom needs to move in with us because I'm going to be bedridden. The doctor said that I need to be in bed at least a month and I can't get out. I can't do anything else. My husband was about to go out on tour and my mom, had the freedom to be able to come in. So she moved in. And I remember just laying there day after day and just being lost in my thoughts. And everybody knows what those thoughts are. You just kind of start to spiral. And I call it the lights were dimming. You don't just wake up depressed. It's like this slow dimming of the lights that happened. And sometimes in bed, I would try to get up and wash a bottle. And my mom would say, no, you're my daughter. I love you. You need to get healthy, physically healthy. And I take care of the baby. I got the baby. Baby is fine. And I just noticed as those days were going by, I was just sinking into more of a dark space. And I was feeling really guilty of not being able to take care of my son. And I, would think about all these Instagram people and how much they were killing it. Then I would look at myself like, yo, you are an extra whack mom right now. Like you're awful at this. And I would just go in on myself, but I was doing it privately. And what's so interesting about my depression, I call it functional depression, like a functional alcoholic, where when people would come visit me, my friends would come see the baby, I was able to snap back into my normal self. I was able to crack some jokes. I was able to laugh and smile. And so no one knew about my depression. I was able to hide it because as soon as that door closed, I was a hot mess, but by myself. And it wasn't fun. It was definitely, well, obviously it wasn't fun. It was definitely a really hard time in my life, and it was really lonely. And I didn't talk to my mom. I didn't talk to my husband, and they didn't know much about depression, so they don't even know the symptoms of what to look out for. And interesting enough, I had asked my husband years later, after I've done my work, after I healed myself, what did you think of the way that I was after the birth of our first son? What did you think about me? And he told me, he said, I thought you were lazy. I thought you were a bad mom. And what's interesting about that is I knew that that's what he thought. I just didn't need him to tell me that. And so this is why it's so important to have this conversation with your partner when you feel like you're going into a dark space, and to make sure that they can't just assume. You know, I'm from the Black community. We don't talk a lot about mental health. The door is starting to open a little bit. But if you, especially as a mom, if you've just become a mom, you have this huge responsibility. If you start to feel those lights dimming, if those thoughts start to get a little bit darker, a little bit more painful, speak up now. Talk about it. Because when you talk about it, that conversation can start, and then we can start figuring out what it is that we need to do. Now, back to my land is, again, I'm starting to spiral a little bit. I'm getting to that darker space. And there was another area in my life that I felt so shameful about that I did not tell anybody because I felt so guilty. When I was pregnant, I would talk to my friends. I would talk to my sister-in-law. They had kids before me. And they would say, when your child comes, there is a love that you feel that you have never felt before. It's this deep connection that you have. And then when my son was born, I didn't have that. I didn't feel that unconditional love. Did I love him? Yes, of course. Am I going to take care of him? Am I going to make sure he's safe and in a healthy environment? Yes, I'm going to do all of that stuff. But I didn't feel that feeling that all these other moms said that they felt. And I felt so much shame about it. And I didn't understand why I felt so disconnected. I didn't realize at the time it was depression talking. And it's such a deep hole that you're in when you're in that land. It's hard for you to see outside of it. And if I can't connect with myself, how in the world am I going to be able to connect with my newborn? But that's information I just didn't know. So now here I am. About a year later, I get pregnant again, and I find out that I'm having a boy. Now, granted, I'm still in depression state, but I think to myself, yes, this is an opportunity for me to do it again, for me to have this connection with my newborn. That's all I was thinking about. I missed it the first time with the trauma I had, and then going into this depression land. And I thought, okay, we're going to do it right this time. I'm going to have another chance. Baby number 2 comes 3 weeks later. 3 weeks later, my then now 1-year-old starts having seizures. And my newborn's 3 weeks, but he's perfectly healthy. My husband's out on tour again. And so I have to hire somebody to take care of my 3-week-old so I can take care of my sick 1-year-old, who I needed to monitor pretty much on a 24-hour basis. I had to take his temperature every 30 minutes, especially in the middle of the night, because that's when his fever could skyrocket. So I'm sleeping on the floor of the nursery, taking his temperature and not sleeping. And we all know what happens to the mental health when you're not sleeping. So I'm already in that dark state. And then I'm not sleeping. So I start to spiral all out of control because I then also lost that opportunity to take care and connect with my newborn because I'm over here worried about my sick child. It was getting so dark for me. I was saying some of the most crazy things in my head, like, why are you here? You're just a waste of space. And it's not that I actually was going to, move forward with those thoughts or be actionable with it. But I knew the fact that those thoughts were arising, that there's something that I had to do. There's some kind of change that I had to make. And one of the things that I'm really good at is studying. I went to law school. I'm barred in both California. I'm barred in both California and Texas. So I am really good at sitting down and studying. We would have to sit for 15 hours at a time in a day. And so I was like, you know what? I need to learn about the mind. I want to learn why I'm having the thoughts that I'm having. I want to learn why I am feeling the way that I'm feeling. I need to understand the mechanics of the mind. I became obsessed with it. I studied the mind for a year, 15 hours sometimes at a time, because I wanted to know everything about it. And I thought, if I can learn more about how something works, how something operates, maybe I can get myself out of this funk. And one of the most beautiful things that I learned, and I learned Eastern medicine, what they do in the East and India and yoga, and I learned what psychologists do. And one of the most beautiful things that I learned out of all of that research is that I can heal myself. And there's actually a science behind the healing. There are changes that I can create in my brain to make myself happier, to make myself more joyous. And when I saw that, I took it really serious. I said to myself, okay, if all these people have done this, I'm going to do it too. And because it's a science, I was able to really just look at all of these things, all the tactics, all the strategies, all the meditations, all the stuff that I had to do. And I did it. And I was able to get myself out of depression. And today I feel it's my duty to teach people how to do that, that you don't have to necessarily take medication. You don't have to go into therapy and spend a whole bunch of money. We have the ability to heal ourselves. And that's why I created this podcast. Now, thank God I did the work that I did to get myself out of depression, because nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what was to come after the birth of my third son. When he was 10 days old, he contracted meningitis. And I remember being in the ER. We were living in Los Angeles at the time. And this doctor came up to me. Mind you, I am 10 days postpartum. I have a UTI. I have hemorrhoids. My body is in so much pain. And then, all the hormonal crazy that you go through after having a child. And this doctor, this woman doctor, I can see this actually happening as if it happened yesterday. But this doctor comes up to me, looks me in the eye and says, "Ma'am, your child is either going to die or have brain damage." And I swear, you guys, if I didn't do the work that I do, I would have lost it. I would have, if I was still in that mode of my depression and all of that stuff, it would have, I don't know what point that would have taken me. It would have taken me to a whole nother level of darkness. But because I practice what I do, I know how to handle these types of moments so that they don't take me into the dark place. And one thing that I know is everybody has a story. Every single person. Now, it may not look like mine. Your story might have started in childhood, maybe some type of abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, or physical abuse. Or your trauma could have happened in adulthood, a betrayal, a cheat, whatever it is. We all have that pain area in our life. And everybody, whatever it is that had happened to you, you do have a right to be angry. You do have a right to blame. You do have a right to feel like you don't want to ever forgive people. You do have a right to hold resentment. You have every right in the world. And a lot of stories that I hear, of course you're angry. Of course you have walls up. Of course you don't trust people. Look at what you have been through. That's a natural response. That's a normal response to be. But I also tell people, with every right also comes a choice. And you can allow your experiences to make you wounded or wise. I chose the latter because I could spend my days angry at the doctor who's responsible for my son's meningitis, who's responsible for his seizures that we have to deal with all the time. I could spend my days worried if my son is going to have a seizure in the middle of the night and I can't be there, or I'm going to get another phone call in the middle of the school day and I have to rush to his school. I could spend my days worried all day. I could spend my days frustrated by the fact I couldn't understand half of what my son was saying to me. I also have every right to have those emotions for all the stuff that I have been through. But I don't want to be angry. I don't want to live my life in worry. I don't want to be frustrated all day. So I chose to use my experiences to make me wiser and not make me wounded and not make me a victim. So now back to the depression days before I healed myself. The reason I lost control over my mind, the reason I experienced all these awful thoughts and these difficult emotions is because I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to handle the mind. And when you don't know how to handle something, it'll become your enemy. It's just like if you're a parent, if you're a mom or a dad, and you don't know how to handle your children, what's going to happen to the household? What's going to happen with your family? It's going to fall apart. It's going to be messy. It's going to be chaos in there. Or if you're an employer and you have employees under you, you're a manager and you don't know how to handle your employees, what's going to happen to the business? You're going to lose money. The business is going to fail. The mind is supposed to be your employee. It's supposed to work for you. The mind's just like any other part of your body, like your legs. When you want to stand up, you direct your legs to do that. You want to go running, you direct your legs to do that. You want to jump up and down, you direct your legs to jump up and down, or your hands. If you want to type something, if you want to text somebody, if you want to wave, you direct your hand to wave. But what would happen if I picked up a knife and I just start stabbing myself all over the place? We would know something is wrong, right? If I just started hurting myself with my hand and with a knife, I know that something is wrong. The mind is just like that. When you criticize yourself, when you judge yourself, when you belittle yourself, when you say, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, there's something wrong because the mind's not working the way that you want it to work. Now, most people don't understand the role that the mind is supposed to play in your life. But when you know, when you understand, when you learn why you think the way that you do, why you feel the way you do, why certain emotions arise in your life, the mind can no longer hurt you. It's just a tool you're supposed to use for your benefit, just like any tool that you use. Let's say a chainsaw. A chainsaw is used to, cut down some trees. But if nobody's taught you how to use a chainsaw, or if nobody taught me how to use a chainsaw, I've never picked up a chainsaw in my life. And if you told me to, go cut down a tree outside, and I do that, 100%, I am going to hurt everybody around me and I'm going to hurt myself. The same thing with the mind. When you don't know how to handle the mind, when you haven't been trained on how the mind works, you hurt yourself and you hurt other people around you. The mind's it's also like a video camera. If I want to shoot a movie and I've never seen a video camera in my life and somebody says, okay, action, and I'm the director and I'm over here trying to shoot and all this stuff, but I don't even know how to zoom in, zoom out. Everything's blurry and all this. It's crazy. What's my movie going to turn out? A hot mess. It's going to turn out crazy. But if I understand how the camera works, I can make the most beautiful film ever. I can make it exactly how I want it to be. And the mind is like that. If you know how to work it, if you understand the mechanics of the mind, you can create the most beautiful life for yourself. You can create the life that you want.